Good morning, YouTube. It's Rochelle Tannen. Told you I'd be back with a part 2. It's about 5:30 in the morning. I'm up early to get ready for this weekend and this upcoming holiday. I told you I was coming back with a part 2 about Dawn Wood. You know, I've been thinking about Darrell and his mother and what I see when I'm out here in the black community. And for me, they represent almost everything wrong with the black community in almost 2023. You know, I told you in the first part that I met a guy, we call him Queens because he's from New York, and he put me on to Darrell Brooks, and I look at him as a Darrell Brooks, except he's 45. And I'm going to elaborate, and this is going to tie into Dawn Wood. When I met Queens and I was getting to know him, I went to his apartment, which is in University City, which a 45-year-old has no business living in a student apartment. But I'm not rude, so I don't know. I'm getting to know this guy, so who am I to judge where he lives? Because I'm not in the best situation. But as we're talking, he gets to talking about his mother and how she helped him through school, which was a community college, which is fine. But she was his counselor, and how great his mother is, and all this other stuff. Now, the guy Queens, he was getting into, because a lot of guys born in the late 70s, early 80s, they love telling stories from when they were dope dealers. Darrell was a dope dealer. He had drug charges. He rapped about being a dope dealer. So was Queens. And I find it funny, the second wave of crack dealers, as I call them, in the late 90s, early 2000s, much like the 80s drug dealers, they are so wishing for them days back, and so are their mamas. They're wishing for that faux money that they made stringing out the black community. But he was telling me about his mother. And when I watched Dawn Wood and Darrell Brooks, because you know these niggas never have the same name as their mothers and fathers in a married unit, I'm thinking about Woods, Brooks, and Queens, and how similar these things are. And these people, Woods and Brooks, are out in Wisconsin. And I'm here in Philadelphia, and this man's from New York. Women like Dawn Woods have raised absolute monsters in the last 60 years. And the black men who have allowed them to raise monsters, the ones in their 60s. Darrell had mentioned that his mother's in her 60s, and my mother would have been in her 60s. My mother would have been 62. And back in the 80s, with women like Dawn Woods, pardon me, because they got different last names, my mom would have called that woman a geek monster. I can look at her face and tell that she used to smoke crack. I can see it in her face. Dawn Wood, as she's comparing her lousy son to Maya Angelou's Why a Caged Bird Sings, is out of her mother flipping mind. Maybe if she wasn't getting high and being wild in the 80s and 90s, her son be worth a damn. There's a lot of Dawn Woods across this country. I'm in Philadelphia. I've met Dawn Wood. They always got excuses for their sons or their kids at large. Now, in the last 4 or 5 years since President Trump, in his years it was the police, in the Obama years it was the police. It's always the fucking police, which I personally feel the police are an end result. And I also feel people every day, like Judge Darrell said, there's good people that make bad mistakes every day. I'm a good person, or I consider myself to be, for the most part. And I've made mistakes. I've been to jail before. But the thing is with jail's supposed to be a learning experience. Unless you're a real career criminal. And see, when I think career criminals, I think of Goodfellas and those type of stories, because those type of gangsters know jail comes with the job. It's like Joe Pesci told Charlie the banker in Casino. I will crack your fucking head open in front of everyone in the bank. And when the time I'm getting out of jail, you'll be getting out of your coma. I don't give a fuck about jail. But that's not Darrell Brooks. And that's not Queens. They're not career criminals. Hell, they're not even good criminals. Or drug dealers. At all. The real reason someone like Darrell or Queens made any money in the early 2000s or late 90s is because the streets were flooded with cocaine. And Jay-Z said back in 98, and this really exemplifies for me a lot of these Darrell Brooks. Fast Money slowed up by 98, 2000. But I digress. Dawn Wood, it's always someone else's fault. And black women and black single mothers like her. The last 4 or 5 years in the Obama years, the last 10 years, it's been the police. The police is the reason there's no fathers in the black home. I just saw a stitch of a young woman talking about how the police kill our black men and then make fun of us because we don't have fathers. Bullshit. I had a father for 40 fucking years. Good, bad, and indifferent. Bullshit. The police are not responsible for these fatherless households. Dawn Wood's responsible for the fatherless household and Darrell Brooks Sr. See, Dawn Wood strikes me as the type of person that she was collecting state for years for all those kids she has. She looks like she had a habit back in the day and didn't finish raising her kids, like a lot of women that were young in the 80s and 90s. So it's not the police who's doing the disservice to these black households. It's the mother and the father. Dawn Wood is now blaming her son's, what he did, that parade attack, on mental health. I see, and I'm pretty good with words and trends, I see mental health's going to be the new scapegoat to everything. Yes, if you were born in the 70s and 80s, you probably should get some therapy. I'm about to get more therapy into 2023 because we all have traumas and went through things as children. Therapy is good. But mental health isn't the fucking scapegoat. And she gave in her victim statement a whole fucking spiel about fucking mental health and it's the dirty little secret. No, bitch, you're the dirty little secret. You geek monsters from the 80s that didn't raise your fucking kids. In the early 80s, because Darrell was born 2 years after I was in 82. Now, for the ones born in the late 80s, early 90s, for a lot of Dawn Woods, y'all are so scandalous. You were so scandalous. A lot of those children are now adults. Were born with cocaine in their systems. And not all, it seems to me, Dawn Wood's like a lot of recovered addicts, women addicts I met here in Philadelphia that praise their kids wrongly because of the guilt they feel when they were addicted. Now, Darrell had mentioned a couple times through all that footage that him and his mother had fell out. And usually when a son and a mother like that fall out, it's because Dawn Wood and women like her get sick of their sons not working and living with them, and they get sick of raising their kids. You know? Now, I'm just speculating. That could not be true, but more than times than not, it is true. But what women like Dawn Wood don't understand, when you should have been raising him as a little boy, you and his father. Because let me tell you what Darrell's real problem is. It's not mental health. Darrell didn't get the one thing I got as a kid, and got many times. Darrell never felt the leather belt of his father. Darrell never had that fear of a father. A healthy fear, might I add. Because to me, children should have a healthy fear of their parents and a healthy fear of disappointing their parents, even if their parents aren't around. See, Darrell never had that. Look at his mother. I watched her interview with that and shout out to Wisconsin because y'all really got some beautiful women. The anchor, she's a black lady that interviewed Dawn Wood. I might put that at the beginning of the video. She's in this beautiful dress looking great. This 60-something-year-old woman got on a fucking do-rag. Her jeans have a hole in it, looking like a fucking hobo. I did a story a few months ago about the kids here in Philadelphia that killed that man, which we don't hear about anymore. And the 14-year-old girl's mother got on the news with the same thing, a bag on her head, clothes looking crazy. If you were a 60-something-year-old woman in this country, black woman, if you grew up watching Diana Ross and the Supremes, you should never, ever, ever, ever come out with a fucking bonnet or bag on your head and want someone to take you seriously. Sobbing about your loser son and how the system did him wrong, and this man is 40. And this video, 20, 30, you need not apply. I'm not talking about young black men. Or young black women for that matter. I'm talking about niggas that are 35 and better. This woman is coddling a 40-year-old because of her failures as a mother. And giving us a spiel about mental health. Darrell Brooks and Dawn Wood, they're sickening people. Sickening people. And Judge Darrell, kudos to you again for putting that Negro under the jail. Now, let's talk about Dawn Wood and Erica Patterson, because, in the last almost 12 years, certainly in the last 12 years, I moved to Philadelphia when I was 30. I'm 42 now. And I went back to school here in Philadelphia. I'm about to go back again. When I was in school, and I'm talking to young black women of that time, this is about 2015. I remember doing some projects in a public speaking class about the dynamics of black men and women relationships and marriage. And a black woman was telling me, a younger black woman than me at the time, was talking about her boyfriend's mother. I went through this. Queens with his mother recently. Dawn Wood blamed Erica Patterson for her son running her Ford into that parade. That shit wasn't Erica Patterson's fault no more than it was the police. The police don't have to shoot out his tires no more than Erica Patterson had to bail your bum ass son out of jail for a charge. He had just tried to hit her with the same Ford. And Dawn Wood's expectation is for Erica Patterson, who's already in a homeless shelter, already away from her children, already clearly going through things psychologically. Again, you want to talk about mental health. Try being 32 with no fucking mother. Try being 24 with no mother. Because I know how that feels. Very few of us out here do. We know how it feels to have no mother. And you got this old geek monster bitch ragging you, raking you over the coals in the media over $1,000 because she didn't bail out your son who's 8 years older than her out of fucking jail. Dawn Woods, you deserve to be in jail. You're not some nice elderly black woman and all that shit. All those type of women that were truly authentic and nice, most of them women in the black community have passed on or are gone. As time goes on, Dawn Woods is going to become our seniors in the black community. And when I look at Dawn Woods, I know that she knows the good stuff. She comes from a different America, but I also know she's trifling. You don't blame your son's baby's mother for things he did. And for me, Erica Patterson, when I look at her, and I've looked up old pictures of her on MySpace and things, I'm not saying she's a saint, because I know she's not. But what I am saying is it's not her fault, and for his mother and him, but his mother to blame her shows what a failure his mother is. His mother's that woman that Kevin Samuels used to talk about that's going to really die alone, and deservingly so. I don't care if she's a Dawn Wood at 62, 42, 32, or 22. And because you got Dawn Wood across all ages, the younger ones just don't know it yet. Dawn Wood ought to be ashamed of herself. Ashamed of herself. And I bet you her other kids are off the hook. The ones that are still with us, because to my understanding, Darrell Brooke had a twin. And his twin is gone, dead and gone. That shows a lot about mothering when you can't get your kid, when you're burying your kids. And your kids are getting life sentences. That shows a lot about your mothering. Because black women have gotten to the point that no matter what the fuck happens, it's never their fault and it's never their kid's fault. It's always the school's fault. It's certainly always the police's fault. It's always a police fault. And, we're so down in this country on law enforcement, not just police, corrections officers and all of that. Like I said in my other video, a grown man right now not having a job to me is ridiculous. If you want to be a CDL driver, CO, you can waltz in them jobs right now. Law enforcement so far down, and we still got black people like Dawn Wood blaming law enforcement for her son. And the baby mama for her son. Dawn Wood had you raise your son decently, much like queens. Your sons wouldn't have baby mothers, they'd have wives. Speaking of wives, Dawn Woods, I would love to ask how much Darrell saw you get your ass whipped back in the 80s and 90s. Because I do not think much of men, black men, who want to beat on women. And in 2023 almost, and I've ran into this in the last 2 years, I've been threatened, and a lot of times I get threatened by these lames because they don't like the truth. The truth cuts like a knife. Like D.A. Harper was cutting Darrell in the truth when she said he's a coward and a chicken, and he's the weakest one in the room. She was telling that devil so much truth he couldn't sit still in his seat, and he wanted to leave the courtroom. You never deal with men that can't deal in the truth. And a lot of black men are liars. A lot of black men are violent. They do like to beat up on women. And then what's really crazy about the ones born in the late 70s and 80s, when it comes to beating on women, they got their chest poked out like they the man. And women like Dawn Wood condone this shit because they used to get their asses whipped back in the day. And I can tell Dawn Wood raised Darrell to be a punk because where was all that bravado that Brooks showed Erica when he punched her in the face? Where was all that bravado with them FBI agents? Or when DA Zach aired him out in that courtroom. And like DA said, I'm not done. Now you could scream and yell and roll your eyes. That's another thing. Dawn Wood and women like her. What's up with your sons rolling their eyes and rolling their heads and being jealous and all that shit? That's for women. Like I told a 36-year-old a year or so ago, outfits are for women. It seems like to me, Dawn Wood and black women like her, y'all didn't really, and their fathers, but usually they're not around, didn't teach them that certain behaviors are reserved for girls and women, like rolling your eyes in your head. That lets me know you didn't raise that nigga. And don't nobody feel sorry for you, Dawn Wood, or your raggedy ass son. Now, Erica Patterson, and I don't do this often, and I heard, and he made it a point to say she had 5 kids. I don't care if she has 5 kids. Who cares? You got kids, nigga, and you don't take care of them. Erica Patterson, I hope you take all the opportunity you're about to get your life together, take your 5 beautiful children, and don't look back. Don't think about some lame like Dawn Wood. Think about being better than that generation of women. Because look what they raised. Your life is not over, Erica Patterson. You're only 32. But on that note, guys, I'm not going to make this too long. I'll be back with some more videos, and I'm out of here.